All right, today we are going to talk about format. You guys were really struggling with just basic formatting in your little short discussions that you're doing, your 300-word essays. So this next group discussion activity, we are going to not write, we're going to practice formatting and trying to figure out how to properly format these little essays. So in college, the expectation is anytime you write an essay, the expectation is that you will always include in-text citations and a full works cited, even on these little simple exercises that you're doing for me. So if you don't know what formatting is or how to format a paper, a really great tool that we use here at PJC is the Purdue OWL. And that just stands for their online writing lab. You can just Google Purdue OWL and it will come up, and we are going to look specifically at MLA format. So when you click on it, here's the style guide. And it's really cool because it talks about like what exactly is MLA style. Like if you don't know what it is, kind of gives you an overview of it. We are going to be looking at the style guide. Purdue also produces like Chicago style. That's what that's what we use. APA style, you use that like in psychology and sociology. MLA is pretty common. A lot of people will use MLA for like English. We sometimes use it in history, like lower level history courses. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the formatting guide. And what I want you to read over are in-text citations and then also works cited, basic format. So in-text citations, anytime you paraphrase, anytime you borrow, referring to the works of others, like I want you to summarize your textbook, but you borrow that information, you're using the textbook's information, putting it into your own words, you still have to cite that, right? You didn't just know that. It's not like everyone knows Christmas Day is December 25th. That's common knowledge. But what you're reading in your textbook is not common knowledge, and you have to cite it. Let me show you how to do that in just a minute. But in MLA style, referring to the works of others in your text is done using parenthetical citations, also known as in-text citations. And they give you some examples here. So what they are doing is paraphrasing some of it, but also directly quoting in these first two examples. This next one, they just summarize what Wordsworth said. So, Wordsworth stated that romantic poetry was marked by a, quote, spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, end quote. And this is found on whatever book is written by Wordsworth on page 263. They do it again here where they don't use the author's name, but romantic poetry is characterized by the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. This is found in a book that Wordsworth wrote, and he wrote that on page 263 of that book. Here again is another example. Wordsworth extensively explored the role of emotion in the creative process, listing the author there and then telling me what page number it's on. Then when I go to the works cited and see the full source citation, it is written by Wordsworth. It's the name that they cited here. William is his first name, and the book that this can be found in, these quotes and this paraphrasing the summary, is the Lyrical Ballads. And this was published by Oxford in 1967. So I know I can look at Lyrical Ballads, the one that came out in 67, I can look on page 263 and I can find this information that they're using, that they're borrowing from that book. Okay? So in our class, you're supposed to be using the textbook. Our authors' names are Nancy Hewitt and Stephen Lawson. So every time that you summarize or directly quote, doesn't matter which one, you have to put Hewitt and Lawson and the page number. Okay, so let me show you an example of that. All right, let's say that I want to write something about claiming the West, and I want to write about national debate over slavery intensifying. So if I take this and I copy this like that from the textbook, and then I put it on my essay. This is a direct quote from the book. I have to put it in parentheses if I directly quote it like that. I'm sorry, not in parentheses, but in quotes, quotations. And this came from page 391 in the textbook. close the parentheses out. Notice where my period is. It's at the end. I don't have a period here because I'm not done with the sentence. The sentence continues until after my citation. You'll notice there's not a comma in here. I don't put page. I just write Hewitt and Lawson, 391. Now, if I want to paraphrase this, if I want to summarize it, put it in my own words, I'm going to do that. I'm going to put it on pause and do that really quickly. So what I've done here is I've just kind of summarized what I directly quoted here. Instead of using a direct quote, I'm going to put in my own words. So the issue of slavery intensified during the 1830s and 40s, right? Just restating what that said. With the war with Mexico ending favorably for the United States, the slavery debate spilled into the Western territories gained after the war. And I've got some grammatical errors in here that I'm going to have to change, but you get the gist, right? So this is a summary of what was found on page 391. I still have to cite it because I still borrowed this information from the textbook. So I give Hewitt and Lawson the credit for letting me summarize, right? So that's how you do an in-text citations right there. Then at the very end of your essay, let's say you go on for another 210 words, you're going to write the full source citation like you would for a works cited page. So in this case, it's going to be a little bit different. You're going to want to put both of the author's names, the title of the book, the publisher of the book, and the year it was published. And it's going to look like this. So here I have both authors of the book listed. I have Nancy A. Hewitt, so it's always the first author's last name, comma, first name and initial if they have it, period after that initial, comma, and then you just write the next author's name just normal, Stephen F. Lawson, period. Right here I need to italicize this because this is the title of the book, the container. So Exploring American Histories, a Survey with Sources, period. Third edition, period, because that's an abbreviation of edition, comma, then I list the publisher, comma, then I list the year that it was published, put a period. That is the full source citation. So whoever is reading my essay are like, okay, Hewitt and Lawson, I'm going to come down here to the work site, I'm going to find Hewitt and Lawson. There's Hewitt and Lawson. So, oh, okay, well on page 391 of Exploring American Histories, I can find this information if I look at the third edition that came out in 2020. So I know exactly what book and where to find it in this book because I've let the reader know. Go on down, you can find the rest of that information. You have to list both. You have to list your in-text citation and your full source citation in the essays. That was discussed in the group discussion overview, the video about how to do it. I explained that to you and a lot of you still are not doing that. So this is the correct way to do it. Another thing I want you to pay attention to is sometimes a lot of you guys are using electronic sources, you're using the internet, and that's fine too. I'm going to show you an example of how to correctly cite that. Let's just say I want to write about the War of 1812. I found a really good website that talks about the War of 1812, United Kingdom, United States history, and go down here and it gives me like major causes of the war. It gives a really great summary, and I want to borrow some of this. I want to talk about the Embargo Act, so I'm either going to directly quote from here or I may summarize. But I need to do that correctly, and I need to do an in-text citation correctly, and I also need to cite it correctly. The cool thing about reputable websites is they actually have a citation generator. Oh, this is so cool. So you click on Cite, and you can also choose how you want to cite it. We are going to use MLA style. It's already done in MLA. So here, just like with the book, it's the same thing. You have the authors listed, right? And this is actually incorrect. We need to change this when we move it over because it should be Gene T. Heidler, right? But then the title of the article is War of 1812. It can be found in the Encyclopedia Britannica, which was edited on the 5th of June, 2021. Here's the website where you can find it. And then also you have to give the date that you accessed it. So I'm going to access it on today, the 2nd of November, and I'm going to write that down. And it'll even let you copy it. Copy that citation. Pretty cool, huh? So when you're doing an in-text citation, you would put Heidler and Heidler, and then these don't have page numbers, and that's okay that they don't have page numbers because most websites, they're not going to have a page number. So according to our MLA citation though, when we use electronic sources, click there, what does it tell us to do exactly? So I actually went to in-text citations, the basics, and I came down here to citing non-print or sources from the internet. What it tells you to do is to include as, whatever information is available to you. The first item that appears in the works cited entry that corresponds. So we do have the author's name. Sometimes you don't have the author's name, so then you would use like the article name or an abbreviation of the article name. So keep that in mind. Also, if you have sources that have 5 or more authors, there's a special term that we use. It's a Latin term, and we say et al, or we write et al, and I'm going to find that one and show you an example of that really quickly. So if you have a book with more than one author, so if it's 2, you list both out, right? Hewitt and Lawson. But if there are 3 or more authors, you list only the first, followed by that Latin phrase that I said, et al, and others. So for instance, this book was written by Anne Frances Wojcicki, and there were more than 3 or 2 others at least. There's probably like 4 or 5 that helped write this book, and so it's just listed, she's the principal author, then it's listed by et al, period, and others. And then here's the rest of it. So that way you don't have to sit there and list out like all 5, 6 author names, right? You just list the first one followed by et al. If that's 3 or more. So if it's only 2, like our book, you're going to list both authors. But keep that in mind. There's a question about that on the little exercise that you're going to do. Read over this, get familiar with it, play around with this. Most of the questions that you're going to find can be found in MLA in-text citations, the basics, and then also down here, works cited, basic format. So there's a 10-question quiz that goes along with this video. I want you to take your time doing that quiz and answer those questions to the best of your ability. That's going to count for your group discussion for this week.